In the small and peaceful town of Beautiful Valley, Lara found herself alone in her old country house inherited from her grandparents. It was a stormy night. The wind howled like hungry wolves, and the rain incessantly beat against the windows, creating a hypnotic and unsettling rhythm. Lara was accustomed to solitude, but that night felt different. An uncomfortable sensation of being watched enveloped her, making every shadow cast by the lit candles become a threat. She tried to focus on her book, but the words seemed to dance before her eyes, forming warnings and omens. Suddenly, a shadow caught her attention through the living room window. A slender and indistinct figure, which seemed to float rather than walk, moved back and forth as if seeking an entrance. Lara tried to convince herself it was just a trick of the light or perhaps a tree swaying in the wind. But then the shadows multiplied. There were now 3, perhaps 4, encircling the house with a disturbing synchrony. Lara felt her heart race, fear crystallizing in her veins. She stood up, driven by a mix of curiosity and terror, and approached the window to investigate further. As she got closer, the figures seemed to notice her presence, and for a brief moment everything stood still. The wind ceased, the rain stopped beating against the windows, and a sepulchral silence took over the house. Lara held her breath, her eyes wide, trying to decipher the shapes that now seemed to be looking directly at her. It was then that one of the figures moved toward the front door. A scratching sound began to echo through the old wood, growing louder and more desperate. Lara recoiled, stumbling over a chair and falling to the floor. The sound of her fall seemed to awaken the house, which began to creak and moan as if it were alive. Fighting against the panic, Lara stood up and ran to the kitchen, looking for something to defend herself with. Her fingers found the coldness of a kitchen knife, and she held it firmly, trying to control the tremor in her hands. When she returned to the living room, the scratching had ceased. The storm sounded as if it had been released from a supernatural pause. Lara approached the door cautiously, the knife raised, ready to face whatever was on the other side. With a swift movement, she opened the door, but to her surprise, there was nothing there. Just the darkness of the night and the incessant rain. The shadows had disappeared, as if they had never been there. In the days that followed, Lara tried to convince herself that it had been just a product of her imagination, exacerbated by the storm and isolation. But every night, as the darkness deepened and the wind began to whisper, she couldn't help but wonder if she was truly alone, or if the shadows dancing on the edge of her vision were something more than mere tricks of the light.